Welcome to the High Tech Freedom Podcast. This is a podcast where we bring successful tech sales professionals, thought leaders, and entrepreneurs to share best practices, insights, and lessons learned with other tech sales professionals. As a sales professional, the more we learn, the more we earn. Once we earn it, how can we put those hard-earned commission dollars back to work to build additional income streams that will create the freedom we are all working to achieve? I'm your host, Chris Freeman. I'm a high-tech sales leader, real estate investor, and lifetime learner. Welcome back. Today we talk about pay, your income, which should be top of mind for every seller out there. And during this episode, I did reference one of my previous episodes with a guest, Matt Four, but I failed to mention that it was episode 27. So I just wanted to make it easy for you to find it. Enjoy the show. Welcome back to the High Tech Freedom Podcast. So today I want to talk about, when should you take a job for less money? This is a question that I received, and I thought it would be a good topic for the podcast. It's an interesting question because in the sales world, it's more than just your flat out pay, right? There's the base, there's the commission, the on-target earnings, or what they call, some people call OTE, the overall comp plan, right? The quota, the plan itself, the accelerators, and stock, right? All of that comes into play when thinking about your overall income potential and your pay package. And so what I want to talk about, I have two different perspectives on this. One, for the early career sales rep versus number two, the more experienced sales rep. So let's first look at this from the perspective of somebody that might be in their first few years of selling. So early career is what I mean by that. So in reality, your starting pay may not be that much. So, slightly less or slightly more may not be terribly significant. Now, I understand it may be significant to you, but just sort of in the big scheme of your career, it may not be as big of a difference. So if you are an early career rep, your focus should be more on the experience that you are getting and not the pay. When starting off, it's so important to understand that you're setting that foundation for your entire career. You can build a strong foundation or you can build a weak one. And if that base layer structure is poor, you could find yourself actually losing out on a lot more income and pay increases. Really losing out on more income long-term than anything you would gain from an early pay increase. And so I'll just give you a personal example, really of one of the first decisions I made in my career. So when I was interviewing for my first job outside of college, I was exclusively looking at sales jobs. And most of the job postings and companies that I was interviewing with, the OTE range was like 28,000 to 30,000. And most of these companies had a pretty good sales training program. That was also something that I was factoring into my analysis. I was also just wanting to get a job, but so I wasn't creating too much judgment around who I was talking to. But the pay and the training was definitely top of mind. So the other piece that I was looking at was industry. What was the industry that those companies were in? And is, will that be an industry that I want to be in for the next, I don't know. At that time, I was probably thinking more like 10 years, but in reality, it ended up being my entire career. So, I did interview with a number of different retail type of companies, but I interviewed with one company that was a distributor of technical and communication products and cabling. I really didn't understand any of the products, but they had this huge catalog and they sold to Fortune 500, Fortune 1000 companies. And this is all pre-internet. So it was like when I was a kid, my dad would take me to the auto parts store and you would go to the back counter and they had all these giant catalogs and you'd go look up your car, your make, your model, your year, and then kind of go down and look for that part that you were looking for. This catalog was the same way. I mean, it was huge and they had multiple ones of them and they'd reissue it every single year. So my point was that I believed that the additional industry training that I would get on top of a great sales training program would help create a really good foundation for me and my long-term career opportunity. And, coincidentally at the time, that pay with that company was only $22,000 per year. So percentage wise, that's a big delta between 22 and 30. But, it was 8K, also 8K, and those dollars was a lot more. But it was all about building the foundation. And it ended up being the best career decision I've ever made. So I bring this idea or concept up because I've seen so many people early in their career, especially when the economy was just on a run, and everybody was jumping from jobs, companies were overpaying with their comp packages, and I would see people leave. Maybe they've only been in the kind of in the work world for 2 years, 3 years. Then they go look at their next job and they're expecting to get a 300K OTE or some big number that's maybe not quite in line with the experience and the ability to contribute. So they get the package, they get in, but man, now it's time to perform. There is no more training. Training wheels are off. You have to go. So they get hired, they struggle, they leave, they go to the next job, they struggle, and so on and so on. And then that cycle starts to become a career cycle. And what happens is along the way, their confidence takes a hit, which then continues to hinder their success. So I don't want that for you. So if you have an opportunity to make a decision to gain additional skills, go for that over the bigger paycheck early in your career. Trust me, that paycheck will be there and you'll make tenfold if you get that foundation set up correctly. I want to break in with this quick commercial from me. I am very excited to announce that we have our first multifamily real estate deal for the year. This is a really nice boutique 88-unit complex in Tempe, Arizona, which is an incredibly strong submarket of the Phoenix area. And we are partnered with my friend Reed and his company at the RSN Group. They're the ones that found the deal. And they also have another asset very close by this particular property. Investment spots on this one, they're going to fill up quickly because it is also structured to accept 1031 exchanges. And there's a number of exchanges out there right now looking for a home. So if you're interested, just contact us through hightechfreedom.com, or you could book a call using the link in the show notes. And even if you just want to learn a little bit more about the investing process, let's chat. I'm happy to share and follow up with some educational resources. Now back to the show. As you're looking at jobs, maybe you run into an opportunity where you can work in a hot segment. Maybe you can work under an A player in the field, kind of more of a junior role. Maybe you have an opportunity to relocate to be part of a well-developed team or program, right? These are all things that I would consider that will set the foundation of your career and long-term success. Just taking the paycheck without those things early in your career, it's going to make the job in your career a lot harder. So in an earlier episode, I had a guest, Matt Four, who talked about an opportunity he had to relocate to Texas and work under a manager that was well known within the company for being an incredible mentor. And for him, it was less about the role and the job that he was going to do and more about the manager. He just looked at that as, wow, if I can go work under her for a couple of years, that's going to be a good thing. And as you know, roles change. So whatever the role you're taking year to year, companies are always tweaking with the plan. But finding a great person to learn from and work from, man, that is so special. So in Matt's case, this set him up for success and eventually promotions and leadership opportunities. So anyway, so that's kind of, if you're in that early career stage of your selling life, just a few things to take into consideration. So what about if you are a more experienced seller? Should you move for the bigger paycheck? Wow. Well, it is tempting. And I've made this mistake once. I took a role. The 1-year compensation was attractive and potentially better than where I was at. But what I didn't look at was looking at it in terms of 3 to 5 years. And it's funny because I'd always had a 5-year horizon or goal in any organization. And if I was going to take a job, it was, I prided myself on having, minimum of 5 years in any role. But I got a little antsy and I took the role without playing out all the what if scenarios over a period of time. So I ended up leaving about 18 months in, and I landed in another role, which ended up being much better financially over the long term. And, So what do I mean by long-term? Because that's ultimately when you think about, do you go or do you not go? And you're thinking long-term, what do I mean by that? So number one, does the role set you up in future years to benefit from the year one effort and the year one success? For example, if you go into some company and you crush year one, maybe you get a bunch of new logos, a bunch of new wins, but then in year two, you lose some of those to another team. You're just back on that hamster wheel of doing it all over again for year two. I would much rather get the win, continue to build up the account base, really leverage my ability to build trusting relationships within that account, and then continue to sell to them. Your job just gets so much easier when you build in some track record with the company that you work for, with the accounts that you're working for, with the business partners in your territory. And when you start doing this long enough, business starts to come to you sometimes, but it definitely gets easier. Number two, equity. If there is an opportunity to build equity over the years based on your success, that can really add up. And this is actually one of the main reasons I left a role after the company was acquired by private equity. So my team had performed consistently for several years, had some great years, and I was awarded multiple times additional equity, RSUs, stock. And this ended up becoming a really nice additional part of my compensation. Once private equity took over, boom, that's gone. And it's like an instant pay cut. And so, I had to factor that in. Number three is kind of when you're thinking about long-term, upward mobility. This may not be important to everyone, but if upward mobility is important to you, you may need to put in some time where you're at to get to the next level. I mean, this could be a BDR going to an inside account manager, an inside account manager going to a field AM or account manager, commercial rep going to a mid-market, a commercial or mid-market, I guess, going to an enterprise rep role. Maybe you want to go from a rep to a manager and so on. If you can knock out some of these promotions where you're at now, the comp and the compensation will come with the experience. Now, I'm realistic. There's going to be a time where maybe you've simply hit a wall for upward mobility, and it's not anything that maybe you did. You're doing great work. It might not be there for whatever reason. Well, so maybe you need to move, and you don't want to. The openings may not be within the company, so you've decided you need to make a move. Well, that's just the time when you think about what I just said. This is an example of where you need to go look then at the whole package. There's going to be lots of shiny objects out there. The next hot company may be throwing out the biggest OTE and some stock, but will that company really set you on the trajectory that you need for the next 3 to 5 years? If you're looking to move up, will they have that ability to get you there? So as I wrap up, first, I want to commend you. If you're in a position where you are seeing opportunity to look at bigger pay and bigger pay packages, there's probably a reason you're being considered. So you're doing some great work, so keep it up. I do want to ask you this thank you for listening. And if you have a story to tell around this topic, both good or bad, because we've all had life experiences, I'd love to have you join me for an episode and share your story. It's so much more interesting and benefits you, the listener, when you hear from other people doing the job and sharing lessons learned versus maybe when I bring on an author or a coach. I love them and I love their stories and I love what they can share, but it's nice to just get it from the people actually in the role doing the job. So you can send me a DM in LinkedIn. You can just book a call on my calendar. You can find the link in the show notes, and look forward to speaking with you soon. Until next week, make this your best week ever.
Thanks again for joining us today. To get more sales and real estate tips, you can subscribe to our newsletter at hightechfreedom.com. You can also join our private Facebook and LinkedIn group that is exclusively for sales professionals. If you found a nugget of good information in the podcast, please subscribe, give us a positive rating, and write a review. If there is a topic that you would like us to cover in the future, please send us a note through our website at hightechfreedom.com. Until next week, make this your best week ever.